There is no civilization that sparks more curiosity than ancient Egypt. The origins of this people are found on the banks of the sacred Nile River, whose floods helped lay the foundations for solid agriculture and livestock farming. Did you know what the pyramids were built for? Well, those enormous monuments were commissioned by the great pharaohs as a sign of their power, and they are the main symbol of ancient Egypt. In this video, I'll help you discover the origins of this fascinating civilization, how they were organized, and those mysteries surrounding the pyramids and life after death. And remember, there are other videos about Egypt that you can enjoy without limits if you join our channel, since with each of your contributions, we can keep making more and more amazing videos.
Ancient Egypt, Part 1. When we mention Egypt, 3 images come to mind: the pyramids, the desert, and that long and impressive river called the Nile. Sound familiar? But let us start by talking about that vast sea of sand known as the Sahara Desert. This place in the north of Africa is not an appealing place to live. However, thousands of years ago, there were abundant rains in the heart of Africa. Little by little, a flow of water was created, and gradually it started to grow. These waters became one of the largest rivers in the world, the Nile. Many people have settled near this river. But living by the Nile has its ups and downs. In the wet season, the Nile grows so much that all lands around it are flooded. But when the water retreats, the land is ideal for farming, since the riverbed has fertilized the surrounding soil. Thousands of years ago, people that had been nomads started building their homes around the Nile. This is how ancient Egypt was born. The Egyptians learned how to grow crops on rich and fertile land. The food was plentiful. This meant that instead of traveling in search of food, the Egyptian people could stay in one place, farming all the food they needed.
You had to search for food all the time, Mommy?
Yes, but not anymore, honey. The Egyptians were very clever in using the flooding of the Nile to their benefit. They invented an irrigation system, which let them grow even more crops. Jobs such as surveyor were invented. Like modern-day engineers, surveyors measured lands and planned how to build the irrigation canals and many other things. The surveyors started to use mathematical calculations to help them plan. Later, this understanding of math would help the Egyptians build great works. The Nile brought the Egyptians another amazing benefit: trade. The crops, food, and other goods the Egyptians produced were put on boats and sold up and down the Nile. Soon, the river became a large highway where goods and peoples traveled, trading with each other, which made the Egyptians quite wealthy. With the abundance of wealth, the plentiful food, and the mobility to trade with other peoples, the great Egyptian civilization started to grow, all thanks to the River Nile.
3,000 years of history.
Over 5,000 years ago, around 3500 BC, the development of trade and agriculture helped some villages on the banks of the Nile become very wealthy and powerful, and important cities started to grow along the river. Around 3000 BC, King Menes created a capital in Memphis, which unified the kingdoms of Upper and Lower Egypt. The symbol for Upper Egypt was a white crown, and for Lower Egypt, a red crown. Thus, the double crown of the Pharaohs was created. That was the beginning of a great empire that would last for thousands and thousands of years. Ancient Egypt was in a great location. On one side, the huge desert protected them from attacks from the south. And on the other side, the River Nile provided food, trade, and contact with other villages and peoples. Maintaining unity was difficult for the Egyptian rulers, since they had many enemies that wanted to invade them and strip them of their wealth. The pharaohs ruled Egypt for more than 3,000 years. Just imagine everything that has happened since the beginning of the Christian calendar, 0 AD, until now, while the Egyptians ruled for another 1,000 years on top of that. That's a lot of time. The social pyramid. The Egyptians organized their social life like a big pyramid. Different groups of people had different importance. At the top of the social pyramid was the pharaoh. Pharaohs were like kings. They ruled Egypt. All the wealth and treasures of the empire was theirs, and they were worshipped as gods. But the life of a pharaoh was not simple. It was the job of the pharaoh to maintain order, control the economy, the laws of nature, the seasons, the flooding of the Nile, the movement of the planets. Whew, that's a lot of work for just one person. Second in importance on the pyramid, after the pharaoh, were the priests. The priests' main activities were serving the gods in each of the temples and performing offerings and rituals. Below the priests were the scribes, whose ability was, well, knowing how to write. Although nowadays we all learn to write as children, in ancient Egypt, only a few privileged people were taught how to write. That gave them a lot of power. In Egypt, they wrote using sacred signs called hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics were drawings which represented sounds, like our alphabet, except a lot harder to write. Though there were more than 700 different symbols, the writing was ruled by clear and simple principles. The fourth place on the pyramid was occupied by the soldiers.
Soldiers were in charge of protecting Egypt and the empire.
Because Egypt was so rich, many armies wanted to conquer it and take its wealth. After so many encounters and so many battles, the Egyptian army perfected its techniques and became very powerful.
Hey guys, now that we're so powerful, let's go attack them! Well, that's a great idea!
And so the Egyptian army set out to conquer other territories to the east and to the south. One might think that with so much fighting, in peaceful times the army would rest. But in ancient Egypt, there was always something to be done. Officers, when there were no enemies to confront, were devoted to tasks like digging irrigation canals and transporting blocks of stone to the building sites of the Great Pyramids. Finally, at the bottom of the pyramid were traders and craftsmen. Below them were the peasants. And at the very bottom were the slaves, who, though they were at the bottom, held up the whole pyramid of Egyptian society.
Colossal pieces of work.
So now to the Great Pyramids, the most famous symbol of ancient Egypt. The pyramids shelter great mysteries and questions that even today remain unanswered. Even modern engineers have a hard time figuring out how they were built. The Egyptian pharaohs believed in creating works that would proclaim their greatness throughout the ages. Each pharaoh would construct fantastic monuments to either the gods or, well, themselves. Take the Temple of Karnak, for example. Comprised of 3 sanctuaries, it is one of the most ancient and largest religious complexes in the world to this day. Or the Pyramid of Khufu, the largest of the pyramids, which took more than 23 years of constant work to build. The pyramids were tombs built for the great pharaohs and were filled with many artifacts. Egyptians believed that they would meet the god Osiris in the afterlife and could bring along anything they had from the living world. So, many of the pharaohs decided to take this journey well prepared, taking many treasures and goods with them. The more they took, the more they would have in the afterlife. Let's dig a little deeper with our time compass and find out what else was going on around the world at that time. What was happening in other parts of the world while the Egyptians were building the pyramids? In the Indus Valley, at almost 4,000 kilometers from Egypt, 2 great civilizations named Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro dominated the largest area of all civilizations at that time, over 1 million square kilometers. And just as the waters of the river Nile led to the development of ancient Egypt, the waters of the Indus River were also vital for these 2 cities. Because just like the Nile, the Indus River flooded once a year and left areas of rich and fertile land on its banks. And so the people who lived in these valleys farmed, created great wealth, and became pioneers in trading luxury articles, such as precious stones and exotic animals. Marks left by these traders are found as far away as Mesopotamia.
Did those ancient traders really travel that far?
Apparently they did. And not only that, remains of Harappa culture have also been found in Iran and on the west coast of the Arabian Peninsula. Coming up in the next episode, Ancient Egypt Part 2. No secret of ancient Egypt that has been learned over the years is quite as chilling as the curse of Tutankhamun. When Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered in 1922, there was a blackout in Cairo. And over the years, many mysterious deaths befell the people who were there at the opening. Since then, it's been called the Curse of Tutankhamun.